Okay, it's live, so I'll turn your mic up.
All right, hello. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Donnelly, DJ Puzzle. Thank you very much, Jason. And Jason also deserves credit for almost the entirety of the sound set that's shipped with the BlackBox, so that's his handiwork. So, Jason Donnelly. All right, so now we're moving to the talking part of the demo. I promise to play more music too. So first, thanks very much for having us. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for coming out. It's been overwhelming, the response to the BlackBox. It's been a new product and a new marketplace for us, so we appreciate all the love, the feedback, all the feature requests, especially all the feature requests. I'm here to talk and try and introduce and give some overview. Let me first outline what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to introduce the box, do some basic stuff, and then in the end I'm going to prepare a whole track and hopefully it'll be a hit song. So I'm looking forward to your help with that. So first of all, BlackBox is a portable sampler. I mean, you can hopefully now see it more closely on the camera. It's a small unit. It's 5 inches by 5 inches by 1.5, depending on how you count it. It's USB powered, which means you could hook up a battery pack or plug it into your car or to the airplane. And people have really loved the fact that you could stick multiple in your bag. I found I had an extra one with me when I came here today. You've got a lot of I/O. I mean, sure, an iPhone can do some pretty cool things, but it doesn't have 4 pairs of audio outputs or MIDI in and out or USB connections. And most importantly, it does not have a micro USB. Micro SD card here in the front, which is where all the samples are stored. We ship it with about 3.5 gigs worth of sounds. Some of the sets themselves are 1 to 200 megs of sound, so it's quite a bit of stuff all in one package. The touchscreen is something that some people love, some people aren't that into. The one thing I will say is that it's quite responsive, so if I pull up these presets, I can give you a sense of just how quick it is to work with. And you'll see as I work through here, it's really quick, and especially since the sequencer is quantized, you probably won't notice that there's a tiny bit of lag on that. But if that's not your thing, you can always use the built-in USB host port and host a keyboard like this one here, or kind of whatever you want. The Korg Nano series works quite well with little pads. They're compact and actually fit quite nicely on the stand. And they're also inexpensive and easy to throw in your bag. Micro SD card is where the files live, and it's also what gives you connection to your PC. So you could put, gigabytes of WAV files on there. We've tested cards up to 256 gigabytes now, which is still crazy, and they keep getting cheaper and bigger every year, every week, I should say. I saw some that were, I think, like $25 for 128 gig card today. It continues to be just overwhelming. And we're also taking advantage of the micro SD card to play samples directly from it, so you're not constrained by the internal memory, which is 64 megs, but you wouldn't know it because you can easily play, gigs or easily hundreds of megabytes of samples because they are being loaded on demand. Another common question I get is, what's the polyphony? Each one of these pads has 4-note polyphony in the case of samples, or 2 notes with the slicer and the clips, which we'll get into a little bit later. The total, you can reliably get 16-note polyphony across the entire box, although it depends on what else you're doing, and sometimes more than that. You've got some effects too, which does compete for bandwidth. Let me give you a very brief rundown of the different sections of it. The pad screen you've now seen for a few minutes is where you can launch your samples. The keyboard screen is select a pad and then flip to the keyboard screen, and now you've got pitch control of whatever that sample is. On the sequence screen, you've got an array of 16 sequences, each of which can control any of the 16 pads as well as send MIDI. So that's quite powerful. It was a surprise to us, the number of people who are buying this box just to use it as a hardware sequencer, because you can also step in here and get many of the benefits of touchscreens and edit things and move them around and do some amount of control like this. The next screen is the song screen, and the kind of interesting thing about song mode is I believe Jason didn't use song mode at all. Is that right? You can pretty much do all this fun remixing stuff using just the first 3 screens. The song mode only comes into play when you're trying to build out a full orchestration, which I will show later. There are some built-in effects. Today you've got a bus 2 effect sends to do a global revert and a global delay. Each of the 16 pads has a control that you can see here on the side that you're saying effects 1, which is delay, and effects 2, which is revert. Each one has a proportional control to send to those global effects. The mix page is just a handy way to see all 16 pads at once and control the volume and pan in one stream. The presets is where you can load in new banks, and that comes with the 16 pads, the sequences, the song, and all the configurations, so you can quickly fly stuff in and out. All right, let me take a little bit further to the actual content and start to show how things sound. So this kit that we loaded earlier is a perfect example of samples, of one-shots. And you can drill in and see how those things go. That's a kind of longer one. And if you wanted to, you could zoom in further and check it out, or you could dial the length and make it shorter like I'm doing here. You've got some basic controls for each of the pads, level, pitch. You do have a filter, which works both directions, LP and H, high pass and low pass. Gate mode is perfect for are you playing the whole thing out or are you just doing it like a tap like I'm doing here. Trigger, well, play it out completely. You've got basic enveloping, ADSR enveloping, some additional configurations here. Each different cell can accept a MIDI input. So yeah, you can see that from there, that I'm now using an external control and I could stack those up too, that each of these can have its own MIDI assignment. All right, I want to show some basic sequencing. Here's something that's already built in, which is really cool. But let's start from scratch to get a better sense of what's required. So first select an empty cell, go back to your pad screen, hit record and play, and then I will just perform on it and it should be apparent from there. I'm going to select another sequence. Now I'm going to make this one longer. So far you've seen that these are 1-bar sequences. You can go up quite high, so I'm going to make it 16th notes with 64 steps. So now I have 4 different sequences that I can play with and bring in and out and make some music. All right, so that's a very basic view of samples and one-shots. The next section I'd like to show you is another set from Jason's list. This one shows off the loops. Here you've got I forget the number, but it's about 100-something megabytes of samples. You've got nice long samples like this one of my favorites. And you can see that that's going to take, I don't know, about a minute. And I can imagine Jason sitting there like turning the knob for but you can easily set a groove. I could get something going for several minutes like this. And it's important to point out that this is all being time shifted. So my next moves, I'm going to play with the tempo. So the nature of this technique is that it's using slicing, so it generally means it's going to sound better, faster, which is why I was able to crank that up so far. You can reliably get like plus or minus 10%. After that, it's, you know, it depends on what you're doing. You've got a variety of settings on, you know, controlling clips. Some of the specific ones to clips are quantization. Do you start them on bars or beats? And when you slice it up, depending on the material, you can get different results if you choose a higher or lower setting. It's really, 16ths are better for drums, higher settings are better for pads or things you don't want to cut as often. All right, that is my brief intro. We didn't really cover effects yet, but I'll try some of those in the next round. For my next demo, I am going to attempt to build a hit song. All right, so I'm going to start with a blank preset. I'm going to try and limit the talking, so let me quickly outline what I'm going to do. I'm going to live sample the circuit, which is over here to your left. Might be off screen for those of you at home, but just know that it's a couple of loops I will use the synthesizer to produce. I'm producing MIDI clock from the BlackBox, and I'm slaving the circuit to the BlackBox, and I'm going to grab a time synchronized loop, and then I will dial the parameters as I capture it. So I'll capture a couple of those. I will load some samples. Then I will load some clips, and then finally I'm going to throw some sliced things on top of it. So you'll, in particular, there's the countdown sound. You've probably heard enough of Powell 11 stuff in the past week that you'll be familiar with the countdown. I'm going to take that and take the pre-cut slices out of that and use that in my track. Okay, wish me luck. All right, here's the sample screen. Use quantization of 1 bar, and we are ready to go. right, that's the beginning of part one, or the end of part one. Thank you. So this completes what Jason just did. It's like that was all kind of the sequence mode. Hopefully, I illustrated like how these different things work, even though I can't remember how to play that part. The next thing I'd like to show you is like how to turn that into a song. You may have seen me at the very end here building out the sequences for the loops, so that enables us to build some song sections that will be the final part of this demo. Okay, song sections. The easiest thing to do with song sections is to snapshot your sequences like this. So the obvious ones to start with is the one there at the bottom. So I'm just gonna hit song mode, and then start with. All right, now I've grabbed that as in my first song section. I'm gonna create a new one and a couple more. You rename it. Intro. Middle. And then, fair enough, this will be the end. In the middle, I will do some more advanced stuff where I will actually capture the way that it evolves. So we're here. So we've got this going. Let's have our kick and hi-hat going. Maybe add a... we don't have a snare. Let's not worry about that. Okay, so this is the middle section. So now I'm going to record the middle section and add some of those other elements in and out as I go. 12, 11, 10, 9, ignition sequence 5, 4. All right, so now we've captured that, and let's quick double check that. I'll undo all this and try it here in song mode. Let's make sure that it works. 12, 11, 10, 9, ignition sequence 5, 4. 12, 11. All right, that's what I wanted. Now I'm going to do the end section and just grab those two things. All right, that's what I need. Okay, now I'm going to do song mode from the beginning and do some stuff along the way, and then here's the hit song. Ready? Here we go. All right, thank you very much. All right, that is the end of my prepared section. We've got some giveaways, but first, any questions? Sure.
Is there an individual EQ per sound?
Let's see, so I'm asked to repeat the question. Is there EQ per sound? Per pad, there is the filter that I showed you earlier. This one, the high pass, low pass. And I don't like what a DJ mixer has. I think it looks like you have the same thing. Next.
If you're using a keyboard or something along those lines, does this respond to velocity?
Yes. I gotta turn my reverb down, but.
And is there a way to make that touch?
Yes. Thank you for asking. So sorry, what the question was, is there velocity via external and internal? And the answer is yes. Anyone else? Sure.
So the outputs are DC potentials. You can record and play back just DC voltage.
Right. Another good question. Yes, what are the inputs and outputs? They're plus or minus 5 volt DC coupled inputs and outputs, which means you could capture a CV signal. The DC means you could go all the way down to an LFO or something that's, a constant voltage even. So you could record, your modular doing control voltage stuff and play it back.
What happens when you record something like that and you make it a sliced clip and then time stretch it? Does
It makes it better. Yeah. So sorry. The question was, what does it happen? What happens when you time stretch or manipulate it? You know, it's the same audio type things. I mean, it's like the slicing. It's going to like cut it into pieces, and depending on how it's split up, like if you have little blips, they're going to be spread apart or pushed together. I mean, the nature of slicing is that you are just sort of making little trapezoids out of the audio waveforms, and sort of butting them together. So if you can imagine that same concept for CV, you know, it depends on what you're cutting. Is kind of the answer. It'll still work.
So along those lines, you wouldn't want this with a normal sample, but with sampled CV, if you wanted it to get faster or slower with tempo changes, can you set that on the clip so that it will do so?
Yeah. So the question was, can you time shift, tempo change CV? You certainly can. Although the technique here that we're using is going to be not as appropriate. I mean, there you actually you might be better off putting that in sample mode and just adjusting the pitch, and it's going to change the rate in a very linear scaled kind of way.
Hoping there would just be like a checkbox inside of that particular clip for, follow time stretching or stay at this pitch level. And that could be a feature request.
I mean, if you're talking about clips, let me go to my clips over here. It's essentially if you're saying, like, if you use the sync setting none,
Yeah.
that's saying, run it at the original tempo, which I don't believe I repeated the question, and I've forgotten it by now. Help me out if I've missed something. But you can, to reiterate, you can play clips, be them audio or CV, in sync with the tempo or free running if you like. And then the pitch control is really what's going to give you that additional, speed tracking thing, which is probably more what you want in CV as opposed to audio.
And then you just say, okay, an octave is twice as fast anyway.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Back to audio clips. How long can a sliced clip be?
How long can a sliced clip be? At present, let's see, we've got a new beat count control, which let's turn this as far as it goes and see what happens. I think it's going to max out at 512, but that's just a limitation more based on like how many numbers I felt like typing in than the actual limit of the hardware. Okay, 512. If you used auto and you're using a power of 2 length, you can go quite long. And I guess it's how long do you need is maybe a better question. I mean, it is still working in auto mode. It's assuming you've got like 2, 4, 8, 16, powers of 2 bars. With this beat count control, you could make that 13 or 27 or something other than the power of 2. Beyond that, we don't have a good solution for you. But most of the applications we've seen, like that's enough. You tell me if that's right. Okay. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about internal modulation?
So internal modulation. At present, there's a few things you can do internally, and that's largely setting MIDI things, MIDI inputs against controls. The most frequently used one so far is velocity controlling the volume. That's something that our modules, our Eurorack modules, like do quite extensively. Here in BlackBox, there's not a lot of that stuff yet, but it's a pretty common request and something we may do over time. Yes.
How do you update the firmware?
In order to update the firmware, what you need to do is take the micro SD card out and stick it in your computer and then download a file from our website. Bring it back over, do a power up sequence, hold some buttons, power the thing up, and within 15 seconds it'll have new firmware.
And that's all online?
Yes, that's online. It's on our forum. All we ask is that you register to access it, and that's freely available.
The sequenced clips, do they have to have the same number of beats? Do they have to have the same time signature as each other?
No. To restate, clips do not need to have the same time signature or the same number of beats as each other. In fact, here's an example. I just messed this one up. But if I go load the cinematic tensions one, you'll see that they're all over the map. And this first one is 16. This one here is 128. So you've got to control. They can be as different as you like. Time signatures, we are kind of based around 4/4, but with a beat count, you can make it, your choice. You define what the denominator is.
How did you notice that? Were you going through all the files?
It's well, I mean, there's. How did I know? No, they're in. It's in the asset tag.
Ah, gotcha.
You did that.
Yes. I was just wondering if you actually went and looked at every file. It's like,
Oh, every single one. Ask me, and I've got it memorized. Yeah, they're all 32.
it's like 800 of them.
Yeah, try and stump me. All right, do you want?
This question might actually be for Jason, but what are your favorite apps for preparing loops to play back in BlackBox?
Why don't you come on over?
Oh, sure.
We've got the magic of technology. It's right here.
Oh, okay. So he's asking what are my favorite apps, or I guess a DAW that I use, or tools that I use to record the loops before porting them over to, like, importing them into BlackBox. And so our loops, I have loops that date as far back on our site that date as far back as 2001. Some of them might sound dated. They're not in here. Don't worry about that. But then some of them are more like live instrumentation, guitars and things that are pretty much timeless. Those, and we may have gotten them from all kinds of different producers. Well, not a lot. I mean, I have friends that I work with, but I'm just saying the sources are kind of scattered. But personally, what I do now in this current time is I use Ableton Live or Cubase, and I kind of flip-flop on those two for my DAW. And so I'm a big hardware guy, so a lot of things I do will be from hardware synths and drum machines, stuff like that. So, I mean, usually I prepare them and record them in Cubase or Ableton Live. So I don't know, I hope that helps.
Do you still use it?
If that's not enough detail, I'll be more than happy to give you more detail.
So you sample exotic app, it's not, there's no exotic apps. So.
Yeah, no, there's no. The thing about cutting a loop, though, is you think it's like really simple. Oh, just set your selector to 4. Somebody might chuckle, but because he knows. And it is, in theory, it's pretty simple, but a lot of people don't get it. They don't cut perfect loops. They don't sound good. They don't loop right. So these are things that Matt, I, and Dean over here, we know. We've been doing it for so long. Some things you might crossfade, like a pad. You want it to loop. Maybe you don't care about giving them the tail, but when it's looping, you want that to sound seamless, right? So you might crossfade that loop. So there's a lot of different tricks and things that we'll do to achieve the desired, output. So it's funny when I might go to hire somebody who is a really awesome producer and their music sounds amazing. The production, EQ, everything's on point. But they send me these loops or what they think loops that have been edited and cut right, and they're not. I don't know what happens. You just set the selector in your DAW and render, right, or bounce it down. But a lot of times, maybe live, I've noticed there's a little quirky thing about live. If you don't do it right, it doesn't render the selection unless you click on the selector before you go to render, right? You know what I'm talking about? So you can do it by having that selection highlighted, and then going in and when you're in that screen for choosing the track you want to bounce down, you can just go boom, 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 boom there manually and do it. But if you're going to go in and kind of poke around on the workspace, solo it, and then render it, make sure that loop selection is highlighted, because it won't render. It'll bounce whatever, maybe the whole length of it, or sometimes I feel like it almost chooses its own selection of that audio.
Do you want to speak to SoundForge or Acid? Do you use either of those?
Yeah, so Acid, the thing about Acid and cutting loops, I've done it. I've recorded loops in Acid, but because it's time stretching, whether you have that tempo different than the original performance or not, it's still processing it through that time stretching, whatever it does. So those markers, sometimes in certain sounds, you'll hear them. Like you can hear in a smooth piano or pad sound, for example, you can actually hear those little markers in the audio. So what I'll do is I won't change the tempo for sure. I'll have the original tempo that I recorded, and then I'll change it from looping to make sure that it's one shot, and then I'll crop the loop out of that. It has to be one shot, and that's how I feel you'll get the purest, unaltered, untouched waveform representation.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, and SoundForge, you can have it show you your selection grid. So if you want, you can kind of line up the grid to the beat. If you know the beat, and while you're looking at the waveform, you can see that beat. You can do that, and sure, it's fine. But it won't be that quantized tempo. It might be a little tiny bit, like 120.23. So if that matters to you, or if it doesn't, do it in SoundForge. But if that matters to you, you want to do it in your DAW and use the selection tool, the selection thing at the top, and make sure it's precise.
Okay.
And yeah, so sorry, long-winded answer. You'll always get that out of me.
There's more. There's
yes.
Lots more where that came from.
Thanks.
Pretending that we just made such a loop and put it on the SD card, can you bring up the screen where you would have imported it so we can see?
Sure. What would the import screen look like? Absolutely. Here is an existing one, but here you would load it. You're loading stuff. What would a loop look like? I'm just going to load another file, and it's not going to look that remarkable, but embedded.
Numbers in the file names represent tempo, or
Yeah. Generally speaking, he and others use the tempo in the file name, which is helpful to know, like exactly where's your center.
but you're still going to set it inside of the editor. It's not read from the file name.
No, really, the trick I would say with loops, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, is like make sure you cut it precisely to length. That's like the start is the start and the end is the end, so that when the software like repeats it again, it just sounds smooth.
Okay, so you don't have to tell it the tempo, you just have to tell it how many subdivisions.
No, ideally, you don't have to tell it anything. Like the most basic place to start is here's a 1 bar or a 2 bar loop, and provided you're close, the software will make the right guess and say, oh, that's given the current tempo and given the length of this, it's going to be 120 or whatever it is. It starts to get weird when you're trying to stretch it far, or if you're trying to do 13 beats instead of 4, 8, or 16. But in general, it's like the basics aren't that hard. Doing it, at a professional level is another matter. All right, Trevor, should we keep going? Oh, please.
So someone was asking if it's compatible with Ableton Live the way Bitbox is.
So BlackBox does produce ALS files like Bitbox does, which is today just the pad screen. That these samples, especially if you go off and record stuff, you can produce when you save the preset, it will produce a ALS file, and you can load that into Ableton. You'll have a 4x4 grid of these samples. The question was, can you export to Ableton? And the answer is a limited yes.
And then, are you going to add more effects in an update?
Yeah. Are we going to add more effects? There's a huge request list of things that we can and probably will do. Effects is, I don't know, halfway down the list. There's, I guess the good news is that we already have a product effects box that has 16 something effects in it. So we've got some things to pull from. So a pretty good chance that we'll do some effects, maybe even EQ. That's right. Make sure you buy your software and hardware based on what it does today, not on what it might do. I mean, Trevor has a funny joke on this where it's, wow, I've got this sampler. It's $600. It's got an infinite amount of memory. There's no track level swing control. That's bullshit. There's always something missing. Don't focus too much on the stuff that's not there. Try and count your blessings, and send us some feature requests. We promise to honor at least some of them. Anything else, Trevor, or do you want to move to?
Yeah, I think we could do the raffle.
Okay. And that requires the.
Has anybody not joined the raffle yet, or needs a ticket, or?
All right, so we've got 3 things to give away. The grand prize is the $200 gift certificate that you were told about earlier. In the meantime, Perfect Circuit has supplied me with some other new, some micro SD cards that they're going to sell soon from Sonal Systems. These are super jam-packed micro SD cards that are easy to lose, but lots of stuff on them. I'm told that they're 32-bit, 48 kilohertz sample packs with about 8 gigabytes worth of material. They're compatible with Morphagene, Bitbox, and BlackBox. So raffle item number 1 is Dark Matter. Tales from the Synth side. You want to draw? Okay. The winning ticket is 535163. 163, anybody? That's you. All right. You're the winner. Okay. Item number 2. Trans-shifted guitars. Also from Sonal Systems. The winner is 155. John. Lucky winner. All right. And now finally, the big grand prize, 164. Hello. There you go. Thank you. Oh, the t-shirt. The super grand prize, the t-shirt. 156. There you go. It said, this is the one? Oh, okay. This one, that one's good? Okay. Thank you. All right, let me thank everybody for coming. Anything else you want to say, Trevor, or we're signing off? Thank you. Thank you and good luck. Bye-bye. Thank you.